All right. Welcome to another episode of the My New Normal podcast. I am honored to be here with Scott McGee, and I'm actually in Scott's palace here where he films and produces this amazing podcast called the Sisu Way. And I want to go into a little bit about how I met Scott, but I also want to hold you accountable here with Scott because we would really like you to leave an iTunes review for the My New Normal podcast, especially if you like it. Even if you don't, tell us what you think about it, but make sure there's at least 5 stars. Thank you. Because your review will help other people listen and find us. Now, how I met Scott. So 2 years ago, about 2.5 years ago, when I published my first book, my first memoir, Warrior, I was looking into media platforms that I could help spread my message, Warrior. And so Wadcast podcast came up through my coach at the time, Hunter McIntyre, who, if you guys know Hunter McIntyre, just look him up on Instagram, Hunt the Sheriff. You will have a chuckle. Good guy, was my Spartan strength training, Spartan coach, basically. He was getting me ready for the world championships. And he was like, you got to be on the Wadcast podcast. I'll totally hook you up. So he did. And I got a chance to link up with Scott and his crew and drove up to Venice Beach, did the podcast. It was one of my first ones that I did for my book. Went really well, I felt, and had just a really good time with the guys talking about real life stuff and struggle. And so that's how I first met Scott. In the coming years, I was on the Wadcast podcast again, talking about when I was pregnant, really pregnant, talking about low back health and working with adaptive athletes. And I've just also gotten a chance to see what he's been putting out there on the internet and talking about, which is strength is more than what it looks like. It's a choice. And his Sisu Way, the Sisu Way podcast is one that I listen to. And I don't actually have many podcasts that I like listening to. So his, I very much resonate with. Scott has also been through, whenever I've talked with him, we would have some really deep conversations. So I had the loss of a father, challenges with the birth of a son, in utero complications. And I can relate to both of those with my own son and father, and just a really, really deep individual. So with that, welcome, Scott.
Thank you. Thank you.
To your garage. Thank you for inviting me up here.
The palace. I call it like, it's more of a thought chamber.
Thought chamber is good. You know, palace was just...
Well, it's shiny. We have a shiny table in front of us.
I like that there's a large sword right next to us.
There's a couple.
Yeah. I like it. So I'm honored to have you on. And today, I really want to get into the topic of father, dad, and like who your dad was and what he was in your life, and kind of go back and forth on that, because my dad was also very influential in my life, and the letters and what it's like being a parent now without a father on earth, and what that was like going through complications with your son. So this is going to be a very in-depth, like as they all are, but a very in-depth and soulful conversation. But first, I want to do a little icebreaker with you. I've done these with a few of the guests so far. If you could be so I have 2 questions for you, actually. One's more fun and the other one's a little bit deeper. If you could be a spirit animal, like what would your spirit animal be? And a spirit animal is something that, like an animal that you resonate with, that you're like, an eagle. Yes, that's me because I blah, blah, blah.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm not going to overthink this, okay?
Don't.
But I'm going to tell you something that my first thought that came up. And that was, I am actually really grateful and really happy that I'm a human. And I get to be a human now, here. Like we all could have, I could have been a beetle. I could have been an ant.
Yes.
I could have been, you name it. But I have the opportunity to be a human being with all my senses here and now. So in a way, like I would say that is my spirit animal.
Perfect. You know, I've never actually heard that response ever. And I've asked that question to all the seminars I've ever given. Like 90% of them, and some of my guests. There's always a unicorn thrown in there, but human. Well, that's good. I like it.
Well, you know, this is something I've learned over time, is that we tend to put our happiness, and so if we're talking about a spirit animal, we're we're putting some type of reward or happiness somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
But that, like, for me, the happiness is coming from within, like, and having this gratitude right here and right now. I don't need to be an eagle. I'm happy as a human.
I like it. I like that perspective too. My answer, and the guests who've listened regularly, is so spirit animal for my purposes of the question is more of a fun, like, okay, if there was an animal that you resonate with in nature, like the polar bear for me, big and white, warrior, cuddly, but don't mess with my family or I'll eat you. That's kind of the...
Yeah, so...
But the human is an animal. We're an animal.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah. How about this? If I were to look at an animal that I'm, attracted to, let's just say a lot of people are like, oh, lion, right?
Yeah.
Oh, a lion. But I look at a lion a little bit differently because a lion is kind of on the lookout all the time. They're always looking around. They're always examining for threats that are coming up. I don't know how often a lion is in, a parasympathetic state. I know they sleep and lounge around a lot, but I kind of resonate with that because, especially in my line of work in law enforcement, right? In a way, we're supposed to be like the modern day, like guardians of people, right? Of people's wellness, health and wellness. However, we're always kind of in a heightened state and always looking around and kind of fearful. So that's why I look at a lion, I'm like, dang, a lion is badass, but also always looking around.
I like it.
Yep.
That's a very good perspective of the lion and just the animal. But I like your first response too.
Oh, thank you.
Human. It's a good one. And again, I get the unicorn, I get like the dinosaur answers, but never the human. So that's good. This is already getting off to a good start. Very unique. The second question is, do you have a favorite fun-loving like dad story that you just think back, like one that comes to mind immediately of your dad that's just like, that was really funny that he did that or that happened with us?
Growing up, my dad kind of took care of the sports aspect of life and my mom did academics. That's kind of the way it ended up working out. And so looking back, I remember when I first started playing catch with my dad. It was baseball or football. And we would also play hockey. And now as a dad, I realized that my dad then was just a big kid. Like we're just like humans playing, right? In sports and playing around. We're enjoying ourselves and playing. It just happens to be with the ball is the thing. And so a funny story was we used to go to the Kings game and they sold these little miniature hockey sticks. I don't know, like 2 feet long. And then they would give away these little pencil sharpener hockey pucks.
Yeah.
Right. And so we had a hardwood floor. And so my dad and I, we'd be playing hockey. And one day we're playing kind of hard and he smacks the ball and his stick comes up and smacks me right in my tooth and chips my tooth. My lip is bleeding. He doesn't know what to do. My mom's not home. He scoops me up, puts me in his VW van bus, and we drive to the market to find my mom. And as I'm sitting there bleeding, and the two of us show up, and I'm like, what do we do? My mom's just like, can I go to the market?
Yeah.
Without you guys like bleeding all over the place?
That's good.
But to circle back now that like all those moments in time, like I completely feel like I'm like not reliving it, but experiencing those again now with my boys.
That's nice. Yeah. It's funny. I feel like I probably have a similar dad story. The one, and now later on having a kid, like those stories and memories come up more and I'm starting to journal them. But the one that comes up for me, and I'll share you this. This is more when he's a little bit older. So he became a Catholic priest when I was in 2005. So this was more than 10 years ago now. But, as Catholic priests do, they do confessions. And he had a flip phone. He had a flip phone until the day he died. Even if we really wanted him to get an iPhone with like Bluetooth. So
hey, those are still the best phones we're talking on.
They are. And they're just better in general because you don't want to text on them. You actually need to have a conversation. So, and I think like the 2 numbers he had on his phone was my grandma and me. And then my brother, like he had my grandma and me, and then my brothers, because they called didn't call very much. It was like, oh, he just knew what their numbers looked like. But that was it. And I think maybe the bishop. But anyway, he had his phone with him in the confessional. And this was during, like right after college for me when I was like in my transition, getting ready for the Marine Corps. I gave him a call and he was like, hello. I was like, Dad, how's it going? What are you doing? He's like, hey, can I call you back? I'm in a confessional right now. Someone's right next to me. I gotta go. And I was like, Dad, why do you have your phone in the confessional? It's like, I just forgot to take it out. I wanted to hear from you. So that was pretty funny.
That's still really cool though, because the dedication there, right? And being committed to the moment. Because let's just say you didn't answer that and then something happened.
Yep. Yeah.
You know?
We were pretty tight.
Yep.
In the end. So I just like, that was just him. This little flip phone was like a nuisance, but also, his way of connecting with people, his parishioners, his family, the fact that he had it in the confessional. And nobody got mad at him because they all knew Father Joe is young, this young priest who had a family. And so they're like, all right, that's his priority. Okay, so that kind of sets this podcast off with, I want to dive into some of the stories of your dad and family, because this podcast theme is about adapting and overcoming. And we all are adaptive individuals. I get to work with these adaptive athletes who society would look at as disabled, but because they don't have any limits, they find ways to do things. So we call them adaptive. There's this whole spectrum. Like if you look at the physiology of cells, they adapt quickly. Like when you stretch, you adapt. You do adapt to the positions you hold all day. But this is more higher level stuff. So people who have gone through major losses, major injuries, or just things that are very significant that create a huge change in physiology and psychology are on the further end of the spectrum of adaptive. And I know in your life you've had many, we all have new normals all the time, but there have been some ones that really stand out. So if you don't mind sharing maybe one of the experiences that stood out the most, that was a big change in your life that caused you to, I know that you started the Sisu Way maybe shortly after your father passed, if I remember the story correctly. It can be that or whatever you choose.
First of all, I want to go back and say thank you. And also on those prior Wadcast episodes, those were some of the most fun episodes I had because you were such a good sport and fun.
Thank you.
Well, it's good. You have like such a good sport, fun, personality, and mixed with, intense knowledge and depth. It was just a great time for us. And that's why we kept having you back on.
Good memories. Those were really good memories.
So one thing I do want to make clear is, and I say this a lot, is that our stories are unique, but the struggle is universal.
Yes.
And so stuff that I talk about, like I'm not anyone special. We all go through stuff. That's just the fact of life. It's part of life, right? Like Buddha says, it's like life is struggle. But it's what we do with it that matters, and how you affect other people that matters. And so my dad, and a little background, my dad had passed, well, he had cancer, and then my wife was pregnant, and then he was sick, and when it got to a point when it looked like he wasn't going to make it, then I had asked him to write to his grandson. At this time, he didn't have any grandkids, so it was the first kid in the family. And so just that like moment to even acknowledge the fact that he's not going to be around, and then to somehow make the words make sound out of my mouth, to recognize it, and then ask him to, one, accept it himself, but then two, to have the foresight to sit still, to sit down, and to write to his grandson. I mean, that's a big ask. It's a big ask for anyone, and that's one of the messages that I push on my podcast, is to write to your kids, write to your parents, and then also have family members do the same.
I've picked that up, and I really, really like that, just because, I have boxes of letters from my father. So my dad was a writer. Like, he wrote to me quite a bit. He wrote homilies and whatnot. He always wrote me letters. How you doing? Just, I love you. And I will never let those go. So that is something when I listen to you and you talk about that letter you asked him to write, and the fact that you're telling people, like, if you think tell your wife you love her, tell your husband you love them right now when it comes up. Don't wait. Like, do those things. Write a letter to someone you care about right now. Writing a letter to my son. Like, instead of journaling, for me, it's like, Magnus, this is what you're doing right now at the age of 1.5. But how was that talking to your dad and asking him that? What did that feel like for you
Well,
to write the letter?
let me remind people, because we're talking about that, right? So
Yes.
when people don't do something or like, oh, I'm going to do it later, you are assuming you have later.
Right.
You think you're going to be here tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
That's an imagination. And I don't know if this is a blessing or a curse, but in my line of work, I see all the death. I see it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
The traffic collisions, the accidental deaths, the suicides, the murders, the cancer. We have a policy that whenever somebody passed away in my city, we had to go there to investigate every person. So we're talking like hundreds and hundreds of this. And so I'm exposed to seeing like how, and all the traffic collisions, you name it, like everything, go see, and to actually be there to see it, to smell it, to hear the sounds of a mother when she lost their kid. Those things are like ingrained in me.
Mm-hmm.
Blessing and a curse, right?
Yeah.
Is what I do with it. So to understand that how life is so fragile and precious. And it's also why I have this poster up here, and behind me you see that tulip over my shoulder, the tulip skull and the hourglass.
Mm-hmm.
Those are all tied together to a Latin phrase called memento mori. Remember that you will die.
Mm-hmm.
And to keep that flickering thought that you could be gone, like when you leave here, you may get in a car accident.
Yeah. You never know.
Not to get hung up on that, but just having that, it'll help you appreciate the now, like right now.
Yes.
And so that's why I ended up, that's part of where that comes from, and also why I have this up here. Also, I don't get tattoos, so I have these instead. But to have that thought, right? And so everything, and then, I don't know, time isn't necessarily linear for me. I don't look at it like point A, point B. It's like, so everything's kind of like tied in together. And so to look back at all these the same moments with my dad, and so to actually ask him to do that, and to see the look in his eye, it was still almost like I had to hit like an autopilot button and watch myself say it. It was a strange thing. And then there was also a time when I was, seeing in the hospital completely sick, and it's like, okay, this is it. Like, there's nothing else we can do.
Mm-hmm.
And to be able to make eye contact with him and shake his hand, like that's a feeling that like I'll never, like, I'm happy I had that moment.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, you're accepting that your dad is going to die, and there's nothing you can do about it, and this might be the last time you see him. Like, how do you show up for that?
Well, you just show up.
Yep.
There is no, like, I don't believe there's any good answer to that. Just showing up.
Nope. So I kind of like, and I think he knew, was completely grateful for everything that he had taught me. And I didn't realize everything until, like, some stuff you appreciate, like growing up, and now looking back, I see a lot more of these lessons and stuff have popped up in my life. I'm like, oh, that's why we were doing that. I'm prepared for this. But also, like, he sacrificed a lot going back. And there's a lot of stuff I didn't realize. Like, he spent a lot of time in prison before me.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He had ever since it's funny, he spent 11 months in juvie camp. Well, back then for marijuana possession. Now imagine you just get like a kid will get a citation.
He was an Irishman, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So had some fights, had some other like property crimes and stuff growing up through the 60s. But then, like, when the family came around and when I came around, his life was redirected. It was almost like, I'm going to change because I'm going to set this guy up for success. And so that's something I take like deeply personal, and to honor him and to lead like an unsullied life and to do well and to appreciate it and help others. So a lot of that's all kind of tied in with the movement that I'm doing now.
Well, those themes of showing up, telling someone you love them, honoring your time because you don't know, are things that have come up. I mean, when I first started doing this podcast, I was like, what do I really want to talk about? I don't want it to be a bunch of BS where I'm sitting there and we're having this like back and forth, just conversation is nice, but like, what are we really talking about that people need to hear? And that also will help us, because the more you talk about it, stories heal, right? The more you share. So this whole concept of time, and we are going to die. So what are you doing with your life now? I mean, I've done things called death meditations and like taking time to like write on paper, okay, you never know. So what am I doing here? What do I really want to be doing? What kind of mother do I want to be to Magnus? Wife? Am I doing those things? And if not, what do I need to do them? And some of my guests, I mean, I've had a guest on recently. His show isn't aired yet, but he has 10 years to live. And a young mother who doesn't know if she's going to die next week. She has terminal cancer. She's my age with one child. It's like, it's crazy to think about, but that could be anyone. And they have the best perspectives on life. And I don't think it takes having a terminal illness, though, to have that perspective. It just takes like thinking of like your father, for example, like you had time with him. Did you enjoy and spend the time with him that you wanted? And what are the things that can keep that person alive right now? How can you make your life matter each and every day? Not just, I'm doing this for me to retire in 20 years and have a great life then. So how do you make your life great now? So the podcast has actually helped me dive into that more and more with individuals like yourself who have that perspective of they've come from loss or they are faced with a terminal illness that isn't going to be turned around by, they can prevent their orthopedic injuries and all that stuff and eat better. But there's a death sentence. And for all of us, you never know.
I would say we all have a terminal illness. We all do. It's not if.
And what would you say? So why do you say that?
Because as soon as you're born, you're going to die.
Yes. So we all have we're all going to be, we're all terminal.
Yep.
Agreed.
So having that, right, will help you be deeply, or at least more deeply rooted in gratitude. And then as you pay attention to that, you might be lifted in some awareness. And then the more self-awareness you have, the more ability you have to self-regulate your emotions.
Right.
So, in order to regulate your emotions, you have to stabilize your attention. So what you pay attention to really matters.
Yes, like the lion. What do you pay attention to?
Yeah.
Very true. I resonate with that very much. So as a father now, so since you lost your father and you had that time with him, you shook his hand, you had him write a letter for your son. Now having two sons, how old are your sons now?
3 and 6.
3 and 6. And it's Connor's the oldest one. And
Caden's the oldest one.
Caden's,
Connor's the 3-year-old.
The 3-year-old. Okay. So what is that like now being a father without your father here? Like, how is that for you? How is that journey?
Gotcha. Something else I've learned is, and I want to point this out because I also have sympathy and understanding for a lot of people that didn't have the same circumstance as me, is that I don't necessarily look at it anymore that I lost my father. I had and gained a father for a majority of my life. Mm-hmm. I had him, and I still do.
Yep.
So I'm grateful for all of that. Now, of course, there are all those natural components of the loss, right? Because really, he just went back to where he came from, wherever that was. There are moments that I do wish he were here to be able to enjoy with his grandsons. There's a lot of lost opportunities of those relationships because they would have had a blast. Mm-hmm. But I can't get hung up on imagination. Can't get hung up on something that doesn't exist. Because if I do that, then it's going to start like polluting my now. What do I have right now and what am I going to do with it? Mm-hmm. So in those moments, I can live for us. He can see his grandsons through my eyes. Mm-hmm. And I see him in them all the time.
Yeah.
And so all these times I have to myself, I'm having these beautiful experiences. And it's like I'm reliving my own childhood and the complete beauty there. And so when we're sitting out here on this front yard and we're playing catch, there's a lot of times I'm like trying not to cry and how beautiful the moment is just to be able to play catch with my son. And because those are some of the best memories that I have with my dad. And now because of that, I have this opportunity to do that for this other kid. Mm-hmm. Now this kid, yes, he's my son. He's both of them like my boys, but I'm also raising fathers. Mm-hmm. And what I do is going to create how they treat women, how they treat their friends, how they treat their kids someday. Mm-hmm. And so it brings me right back into appreciation and gratitude as opposed to what did I lose?
Yes.
No, it's what I gained.
I really like that way of thinking. And that's a way of thinking that I've gained more and more. I can't say every day I'm that way, but it's getting better. I lost my dad unexpectedly. He was doing a 100-mile bike ride 4 years ago. And right before I launched my book, and I got a call from a priest late at night, which on the East Coast is like really late at night. And that was it. He passed away on a bike ride in the middle of the Endless Mountains in Pennsylvania. And I didn't get a chance to say goodbye, but I never forget all the time I spent with him. I always, said the I love yous. And even though his line of work was just out there, I mean, being a Catholic priest and a father, it's just so different. I don't regret that time. And he would always say, even when he died unexpectedly, it was extremely hard. He was a rock in my life, still is. I really had to toy with society is like, oh, sorry for your loss, poor you. His parishioners were, flooded with suffering. And I had to look at the way he did his funerals. Like he would say a ton of funerals, and the way he said to keep someone alive, the way he preached would be, you live their memory. Like take those bits of light that they gave you in your life and you live that. So in my life, yes, I get sad because I have a little one now, and he's built like a Hornick. So my maiden name is Hornick. My brothers are 6'8". I'm 6'1". I'm the runt. My son was an 11-pound baby. He's 38 inches tall at 1.5. Like he's a big boy. He's just a tank. And he's so top heavy and awkward when he moves around. And it's just really cute to see. And so there are moments I'm like, man, I wish my dad was here. And then I realize he is, but he's through me. Like both my mother and father are gone, but they're here through me. And there are moments I'm like, man, I really wish I could talk to my mom about this awkward situation with a kid. Like, what do I do? And then I'm like, okay, I have instincts. I know, I can survive friends, but so there are moments I'm like, yeah, this sucks sometimes. But then most of the time I can rewire my thinking or redirect it to, I cry too, just playing Nerf ball with Magnus, who doesn't catch yet, but is so ready. Yeah. And can look at oh my gosh, his grandpa would love this. And I love this. And I always want to wrestle and play tag and play ball with him. And I always want to include talking about grandpa to my son. And it makes me happy. And it also makes me sad. But those are real emotions.
Yeah. So what is your goal with your son? As a parent, what's your goal?
My goal is to raise him into a strong man who participates in society as a father, who finds a purpose in his life that makes him happy. And I hope to be a good example for him.
All right. So are you happy?
Yes.
Are you strong?
Yes.
Are you able to deal with life's adversities?
Yes.
All right. Your dad is very proud of you, and he lived a good life because he raised a daughter that just answered those questions. Those goals that you have for your son, your dad checks all those. Something to pay attention to. Yeah. You should be proud.
Thank you.
I'm actually humbled and honored by his life that he raised a daughter like you.
Thank you, Scott. It means a lot.
I'm serious. And so this is the way things are. It's like a bow and arrow, right? Parenthood is like that bow that you're yanking back as hard as you can because you want to be able to give flight to that arrow. Mm-hmm. And eventually the arrow has to leave the bow. Mm-hmm. It's the way of things. But was the life worthwhile, right? And without vain.
Yeah.
I think he is awesome and did an awesome job and is probably sitting back super proud.
Well, I would say the same. Thank you. I imagine he is. I like to imagine that and believe in my heart that he is wherever he is. I do believe there's a heaven, that he's thinking that. If you think in heaven, I'm just feeling, I have no idea. But I also think for your father is probably is extremely proud of you too. And our dads are probably commiserating together at this point.
I hope they should be.
I I anticipate that.
And to circle back, that phone call, right? Those notifications, there's a handful of phone calls you get in your life that you never forget. And the one that I got was from my mom. And all she could do, she never really told me. She just kept apologizing to me, right? Apologizing because my dad didn't finish. And so if you guys don't know, my dad ended up writing to his grandson, and about a paragraph and a half in, he started coughing up blood and died. And it was information about him that I never knew. And I still have it was on an iPad. It was in the notes section on the iPad, which I was so happy he even knew how to use. It had blood on it. And it was, like I said, information I didn't know about him. But there's even, and this is where it's kind of important, and looking back on the stuff that you're writing and the stuff that you're putting out now, and the podcast and the social media and the interviews, all of the stuff that your son is going to find one day. And so there's a lot of stuff that my dad wrote to me in my baby books going back, 1980, 81, 82, 83. There's information there. So at first I got kind of sad, or, of course, about the lost opportunity because it was information I didn't know. But like I said, time isn't linear necessarily, because I can still take the same lessons and stuff that he wrote back in the early 80s and how those things apply. And also the lessons.
What were some of the lessons that are just a couple that really stand out to you that you learned from your father?
Well, if you look around, in this little thought chamber we're in right now, I don't have you don't see pictures of me up. I don't have trophies or medals or whatever stuff you start to accumulate in life.
You have flowers and weapons, and there's more to it, of course. But
Yep. So, well, for example, this sword right here, Excalibur, just to give you a heads up. Growing up, Sword and Stone, right? The Legend of King Arthur. I watched a cartoon a lot with my dad. And it said the beholder of Excalibur is unconquerable and can't be defeated in battle. I'm like, well, that sounds like something I should have. And so when I got to college and I started working and I had enough money for myself, this is one of the first things I bought for myself, this particular sword. Because I wanted something. I'm like, hey, this is a metaphor, right? The possessor of this can't be defeated. Doesn't, in battle, whatever that battle is. So that's why I have that. And that's why I say it's not actually. Is it a sword? Yeah. I mean, it could be something else, but that's what it is. And that sword up there, if you look at my samurai sword here, my katana, it says strength is a choice, and then the Sisu Way on the other side. So the point of that is because it takes, and this is a lot of the where strength is a choice comes from. Obviously, a lot of different meanings. But I say it takes strength to wield a sword, right? It takes strength to put your dukes up. It takes strength to drive forward in the face of adversity, to create force on force. But also takes strength to know when not to.
Yes.
So that's what that represents. So to go back to a lesson. So if you look behind me, you see that baseball up there?
Yes.
That's the one trophy, if I can put in quotes here, trophy that I have up here. That's from a Grand Slam in 1991. And so I think I was about 11 years old and go up to bat, and it's a pitcher that's he's not bringing too much heat. My dad's at the third base coach. Again, bases loaded. So I'm a kid, all eyes on me, and I go up to bat, and I'm trying not to strike out, right? That's kind of like the thing. Don't strike out, don't strike out, don't strike out. And then my dad said something pretty simple to me that blew my mind. He said, Scotty, hit a home run. And I looked at him, I was like, and my brain switched. I was like, oh yeah. Duh. And the next pitch, crack, grand slam. So that I kept that ball because of the lesson he taught me, something simple. So I went from being a person that was going through trying not to strike out to someone that was trying to hit a home run.
It's a perspective shift. Okay, that's a really good example. I love when we bring in sports, because I have so many of those too. I remember I was a pitcher, and my dad, so many people wanted to give me their opinion on how to pitch when I was little, learning. And my dad was just like, one ear out the other. He's like, you do you. It's like, you know what to do. And I had one coach. And he's like, you listen to that one ear out the other with everyone else. Because just so many people want to give you their opinions on how to live. I mean, if you just apply that to life. So how in your life, has there been a situation, say in the past 10 years, a year, a day, where you've had a moment of, don't mess up. Like have that perspective, don't mess up versus go for it. What do I have to lose?
Well, even still having that mindset of don't mess up, you're going to end up messing up.
Yes.
So one thing is important is have an agreement with yourself that it's okay to mess up.
Yes, that's very true.
But don't trip yourself. Don't tie your shoelaces together and think you can go for a jog.
Right.
So in a way, make a commitment to setting yourself up for success. Because if you make that conscious decision to own your actions and own your world, that if you're putting in full effort and you're applying that and it doesn't work, then okay. And I use the example of it's like bowling with bumpers. Like if you put bumpers in the gutter and that ball's in a bunk, it's bunk. Like you can't gutter me. Mm-hmm. My ball is moving forward and I'm going to hit these pins regardless. Mm-hmm. So if I start doubting that, and that's where some of the mental strength comes in, right? Mm-hmm. But we all have that dichotomy of thought.
Yes.
We all have the angel and the devil, right? Or the different parts of your brain arguing with itself, depending on what metaphor you want to use. But that inner hater or the person that wants you to fail or wants you to be okay with it or wants you to not work hard or rationalizes, says it's okay to eat that large pizza and dip it in ranch. Mm-hmm. All that. Like, if you have enough self-awareness that it's even there, because it's there, people don't even realize it's there. Yes. And then you can even hear them talking and you're like, hey man, the devil got you drunk right now. It's like, snap out of it. This is not what you actually want. You're rationalizing to me right now. Wake up.
Mm-hmm. So yes, we all have these thoughts of just, we are our own worst critic. I think probably we can, I talk about self-bullying a lot on this show. It's pretty easy to do, but how have you created self-awareness to know that that's there, but not accept it? So yeah, failure is part of this. Failures in our life and being able to take those failures and grow from it. Yeah. Any failure can be very beneficial, business, professionally, personally, whatever. But how have you been able to shut off or kind of change around that thinking of don't mess up, don't fail?
Well, I don't even think that there is a failure. I don't know. What does that mean? What's a failure?
Yeah, our society puts numbers on it, and an F would be considered a failure in school. That's a very objective thing. But what is that? If someone doesn't learn from that and actually start to apply and learn, I would say that is still that could be still seen as a failure, right? Like if that person takes an F and like, screw it, I'm not good.
I guess if you quit and stop.
Yes. But if you learn to grow,
you got to keep moving forward. It's a bump in the right direction. It's a valuable lesson. You don't learn without making mistakes. It's how you move around and figure out parameters and they're like little mini trampolines. You can jump off them.
So perhaps a good definition, if we were to apply one, not that everything has to have a definition, would be a mistake that's not learned from. It's like one that just you choose to continue to make the same mistake. Yeah. You make that conscious choice. Yeah. You don't choose strength. You choose the alternative.
Which is close to insanity, the same definition, right? But here's something I worry about. Mm-hmm. If that's like, am I missing an opportunity to help somebody? Is there something I did that I miss a moment that I could have done better to help somebody? Mm-hmm. I get concerned about that.
When do you get concerned about that? When you go through an experience where you made a mistake and you didn't learn from it?
No. So here's an example. A lot going on. So here's the rationalization part, right? A lot going on in my life. I got work emails. I got podcast stuff to take care of. I got decompressing, all the stuff that can manifest itself into my attention, into my phone. Mm-hmm. And then I have my kids that want to play with dad. Mm-hmm. So I know that there are moments where I'm on my phone where I should be engaged with my kids. Mm-hmm. And so I worry about those particular moments. Did I just imprint a memory in my kids that they're going to remember about me?
It's a very real way of thinking. I'm the same as a parent. I mean, I worry about the same thing. And the way I think about it without rationalizing is just, okay, I don't want to be on my phone with my kid, but I'm also human.
Mm-hmm.
I am a human being, and I want to, I am not skillful enough yet. I'm in training. I consider myself like always in training, right? I am becoming more skillful in where I hold my attention, but I am very much a rookie still. I've been doing it for 5 years, like really focusing on just through all of the mental health work that I've done, being able to have control over my attention is really important in my training. So when I'm working out, I'm focused there. My phone isn't around. I'm not taking selfies of me working out or, um, when I'm working, I'm working. When I'm home. But sometimes there is that device that beeps at you and flashes and vibrates. So I find that I'm human when these moments happen, when my son's eating and as someone texts me and I want to text them back right away, I do it. But I also know, okay, the skillful thing for me to do, because I don't want to do that, is put my phone away. So it's not even there.
Yeah.
But I'm gentle to myself, that action of saying, okay, take a breath. Phones are a part of our life, and I'm going to have to teach him how to be disciplined with his phone. So if I can, even though he's 1.5, like I'll have this conversation like, Magnus, I just wanted to text back X person because they asked me this question. He's like, whatever. Yep. But I know this will happen again. It's not, these things are just becoming more and more. They're meant to be addicting. But I think I've done so much work on like self-love and being gentle and like what that actionably looks like to say, all right, Teresa, tonight you did this, but put your phone away. You know that. And so.
Yeah. It's addicting.
It is. I had a conversation with an individual. We're all addicts to something. Like for me, I was addicted to food at one point. Thankfully transitioned away from that through self-awareness, exercise at one point. I mean, we can look around us and see where there's addicts. There's addicts. Phone, right? Simon Sinek talks about the phone being, every time you check it, it's like a shot of vodka to your neurotransmitters. And to some degree, I believe that, right? And I am, so the boundaries that we hold and the attention that we hold on things is very much should be part of our practice of building strength and not the strength that you can see. So like, that leads me actually to another question for you is, because, I mean, on your podcast and the work that you've done and you're a police officer, you're a father, and you're also doing this podcast, which is very heartfelt and you go really deep with the things that you talk about. So what are the things that you do to help you stay strong mentally for all of this? What are the action things that you do?
Well, we all have things on our plates, right? So there are other things that I want to do that I don't. So one, I have to look at time management, right?
Yeah.
And making sure what I'm doing has value and is worth it to me. And saying no to stuff that doesn't.
No is a strength.
Exactly. Yep. Especially like and it's not something you can necessarily fully relate and understand to until you have kids and what that actually means. Because if you don't, you're still kind of the kid.
Right.
For parents, you know what I'm talking about. And if you don't, I'm sorry if I offended you, but this is how I feel. And I'm saying that coming from both because I've done both. I've not had kids and I have kids.
Right.
You know, for example, I would do jujitsu 3 times a week, but that I can't. I'd miss some dinners with my kids, and so I have to sacrifice that.
Yeah.
So one, I have to be okay with certain things falling off my plate, and two, something that helps keep me grounded is I don't do the podcast every week. I don't allow the podcast to apply too much pressure on me. I don't want to do it because I feel like, oh, it's Wednesday, I have to put out a podcast. I do a podcast when I'm overwhelmingly like unable to contain my passion.
Right.
Because it helps like generate my message clearly.
Right.
And that's where the passion and depth comes from because I really mean it. I'm not just doing a podcast to have a podcast.
Yes. I think that's very clear with yours, the Sisu Way. And I mean, even when I met you on podcast, like I felt like you just had so much depth to you in your message, and you really wanted to share those stories of what you've learned, especially about your family life and what it's like the things that you see. So I commend you for doing it the way that suits you. So that is a tactic of, okay, yes, if you look at, I have a colleague who likes to share with me all of the data on what popular podcasts do these days. And it's like, I don't have time for that. I don't, and I actually don't want to, I think it's like twice a week, right? And, in person. And I'm an introvert. People that know me really well would know that I'm highly introverted. So I don't get energy from doing podcasts. I get energy from the time I spent preparing, the quiet time I spend after. Quiet time really is a tactic for me. But I'm a physical therapist also, and that's in person all the time. And so it's I need to take time away from those giving to those people. But I really commend you for taking a look at your life and saying, how am I going to do this in a way that serves my passion and helps serve others? But who cares what everyone else is doing? This is the way I want to do it, and it best serves the way I can serve my family and myself.
And also the whole algorithm on iTunes, doing 2 podcasts a week or this and that. I'm 100% free from that because I care so much more about the quality of the conversation.
Yes.
Not the not the quantity. That's great for somebody else if that's what you want to do.
Right.
But my kids are going to listen to this in case I die.
So that brings up, I really, really love that. So a good girlfriend of mine, Nikki Ledford, she's the Clean Plate chef. We're friends. She's a mom. We met actually at the grand opening of Moving Arcs a couple years ago. We opened up a brick and mortar, and she's an avid listener of yours. And she has a little one. She's he's doing the Sisu Way because of he wants to be able to share these stories with his children, so they can find him and listen to what he's about. It's that's really important versus, telling dick jokes or whatever whatever else could come up when you're just bantering about fitness.
Yeah.
So for me, and listening to your podcast too, I'm this is such a good way of thinking about it. Because sometimes for me, it can feel like a job, and I have to step back and say, no, this is my passion. But the fact that, so it totally reframes also the way I think about my podcast now, thanks to you, because now my son can see what his mom is up to and his dad and what kind of people they talk to in the professional world, in their personal life. It's on the internet forever. And he can look at my Instagram when he has a chance to create his own, and he can be proud that his mom isn't doing selfies in the bathroom in a bikini. She's actually talking to people and sharing stories about real life and an example of a strong woman, right? And his dad, so I love your perspective on that. I just have to say that helped me now take on my new normal with a different light.
Well, your podcast isn't something you have to do. It's something you get to do.
Yes.
Right? You're getting to do that. And a lot of times, the part with the social media, and I tell people, I was if you actually look, because again, I use good pictures, but it's more about what I'm writing.
Yeah.
And in another perspective, an angle, because it resonates with people. Some of my best relationships right now are actually through social media. And people I've never physically met. And we have an awesome bond. We're actually talking to each other. But a lot of I say majority, every now and then I might sneak in one that's not, but a majority, if you pay attention, I'm talking to my kids when they're in their 20s. That's what that's for.
Yeah.
So it's another layer of perspective on there. Again, to go back into the memento mori, and that remember that you might not be here next week, right? And to stay rooted. So earlier you had asked me how do I keep some of my strength, right? Yeah. Because I'm in, and not just me, but I'm just like everybody else. And that is that we have our parasympathetic state or sympathetic state, your autonomic nervous system, right? Your sympathetic fight or flight, your parasympathetic rested, relaxed. So I learned, it took me a while to learn this, but I woke up to an alarm, already stressed. Okay. While I'm sleeping, I'm like, okay, you got to get up.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm already kind of like, don't be late. Don't miss your alarm. So a little bit of stress. You wake up, alarm, stress. Now it's immediately trying to hurry to get going, to get moving, to get to work. And then the kids are going crazy, stress. Sitting in traffic, stress.
Mm-hmm.
Get to work, which by nature is kind of stressful.
Uh-huh.
And then after work, try and decompress by adding more stress of physical fitness, which down to a cellular level is still stress.
Uh-huh.
I'm still going, crank it up with caffeine and giving me some rock and roll music, firing myself up. And then I'm sitting in traffic, getting frustrated with traffic, and then trying to rush home, stress, to come home into a chaotic home where the kids are going nuts and got to hurry up and do dinner and laundry and do all this stuff. And then bedtime, rush. And then at some point in time, there might be like 5 minutes where I sit down and just kind of go, do the sigh, vibration from my vagus nerve, right? And I didn't know all this stuff at the time, but this is where that self-awareness leads to self-regulation. Mm-hmm. So I was always in a stressed out state. And I tell people to be a mindful warrior, like a warrior has to be skilled in action and non-action. Mm-hmm. And so you have two sides of the coin, just like our nervous system, right? So I learned to be able to down-regulate my sympathetic state. And there's a lot of different tactics involved there. Because a lot of people don't, like if you don't have time to meditate, there's an old saying, right? If you don't have 20 minutes to meditate, that means you need an hour of meditation. Right? Mm-hmm. So for me, I started paying one tactic that I started paying a lot of attention to is the 7 wonders of the world. Now, most people are probably thinking about all those buildings. Mm-hmm. And this will tie into some of your adaptive athletes. And the 7 wonders of the world to me are sight, hearing, feeling, right? Taste, touch, like all your senses. And then even a little bit further, I add the ability to love and communicate. Mm-hmm. So those right there, those are my 7 wonders. And so I bring my mind to those, or I'll grab one of them. I'm like, all right, I'm going to pay attention to my sight right now and really appreciate it. And I tell people that are like, if they're stuck on gratitude and they're having a hard time getting there, if they're going through something difficult, I'm like, hey, put a blindfold on for 20 minutes and then take it off and see if you have gratitude or appreciation.
Right. Great perspective. Yes, I 100% agree. The adaptive athletes, those that are on the far spectrum, the ones that I've interviewed too, one woman was blind. Those that have, the woman you interviewed who's spina bifida, lovely, sounds like a lovely woman.
Little Misty Diaz.
Yes.
She has a patch behind me that says never give up. That's what that is.
I love it. Okay. They're great examples of, especially the ones that find me through functional fitness and training, is they've been through these crazy, like nightmarish experiences, and they found a way to live an even better life than they did before. Like, it's just, a lot of them were resilient. They had the families. They had, not all of them have, but they found a way to build resilience in their life through community, family, thinking. But I wouldn't say always as a result of the injury. Their lives have completely blossomed, and they've been able to do more actually with their life than most people who are quote unquote able-bodied do in a lifetime.
Yeah, I have a deep like sense of love and appreciation and admiration for them. And I want to put them all, them being on it's like I'm not pulling them all together. But to me, and I remember I was telling Misty this, I was like, she is not her legs.
Right.
She's not.
Not your diagnosis.
She's so much more powerful than the majority of the people that I know. Mm-hmm. And I don't like that out of all the stuff that we can do, you are not the little thing that you aren't able to do. Like that doesn't define you. In fact, that's like the thing that launches you.
Right.
And so people that have everything, if you have your ability, like all those senses, you have all your you have opposable thumbs. Right now, you're spoiled.
Right.
If you can get off the toilet after pooping, that's a gift. Mm-hmm. If you can get out of the car without pain, if you can put on your own pants, like you are the lucky one.
Yeah.
So there are those people that have kind of like woken up from like the gift and curse of health. Like if you can use it and pay attention to what it actually is, then you're far more powerful than most people.
So so the adaptive athletes, talking to individuals like yourself and just doing like self-awareness, self-regulation work myself. It's like, why? So a warrior for me, definition is someone who takes ownership, complete ownership of their health and choose to be on that journey of building self-awareness and self-regulation. And through that choice, you don't have to be a war hero, an athlete, crazy athlete, or anything. You just, that's what makes you a warrior. But through that process of just building self-awareness and learning from these other individuals who've gone through these crazy experiences and are living their life to the fullest, it really puts life in perspective for me. And just, it reminds me it's just a journey as well. And that we don't know if we have tomorrow. We don't know if we have later today. But the thing is that we can take full control of the way we respond to things. We can take full control of our health for the most part. We are not our diagnosis. I am not a bulimic, right? I had bulimia. I am not the depression I had. I don't have to be defined by that. I'm a human being. And so the adaptive stories are, and you sharing today, have been remarkable just for my own path of healing. That's like one of the best parts about doing this podcast is that I feel like it's strengthening me as a warrior, but also like helping me extend this warrior message of what does it take to take ownership of your health and your life. And so by you kind of building this self-awareness of, I need some more parasympathetic in my life. And how am I going to get that? And you do it through breath work. You can do it through cold and heat. You can do it through getting good sleep. But how do you how do you do the reps every single day? It's not just like, I want to do this once a month. Like the adaptive athletes don't have that choice anymore. Like and we're all, like I said, jumbling them all into one category. We all fall on the spectrum, but we don't have a choice. Like, what is it going to take for us? Is it going to take a big injury or illness to make a change? Or can we just choose right now to go on that path of self-discovery and self-regulation and start to make more parasympathetic choices in our life? But aside from any injury, what ifs this, what ifs that, like, how do you do that right now? And I would challenge anyone listening right now, if you're someone that's like, well, I'll start going to the gym when my pants fit, or I'll start doing breath work next week. No, just do it now.
I get fired up because that rationalization is the little devil tricking you.
Right. Yes.
That's what that is. If you start to rationalize, if you have a goal, something you want to do, and if you start doubting yourself, like, you think about that. If you were friends with yourself, or if your friend,
I'd be friends with myself.
Yeah, if you were friends, I'm trying to separate the two. But let's say a friend was like, "Oh, I want to do this," and then you were the friend that was like, "Oh, don't do that. It's kind of cold outside," or whatever. Like, you're the Debbie Downer of your own self. So if you can wake up to your own Debbie Downer voice, I always say that I had a college coach that used to talk about that voice on your shoulder. And he said, you know what you got to do? You got to look over and go, "F you, little man." So that stuck with me.
That's so perfect.
Yeah. So but most people aren't aware it's there. And so let's take warrior. I'm going to go on a little bit of a journey here. We are all warriors, right? And
if you choose to take ownership.
Yes. 100%. Yes. No, absolutely. But I'm saying I'm going to go beyond like the physical realm of what you're doing physically, because there's parallels there.
Yep.
So let's go in our minds. So that battle, those voices, all of us, no matter who you are, we're all going through our greatest war within our own minds. That's our greatest battlefield. Like, you are your best enemy, your best ally, and your worst enemy. Nothing anybody else does and nothing life does is going to treat you like you do in your own mind. So that little battle that you have going on, that doubts you, that everything, that looks over someone and thinks, oh, they don't like me, or all the stuff that you have throughout the day. The little battlefield. So when my dad was going through cancer and trying to figure out names and stuff, there is something about the human spirit that I love, and that is the triumph of the human spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And you always see the best parts of human behavior generally in some type of adversity, under struggle, whatever that is. So it could be a battle against cancer. It could be, you walk into any CrossFit competition or a CrossFit class and you see the human spirit shining when someone gets tired and wants to keep moving through the barbell.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see people, oh, it's difficult, I quit. I'm gonna leave now. This is too hard. Or any documentary that you watch that tells like a story of adversity, whatever it is, the human spirit can step up and move forward really beautifully through adversity. But it's through that battle. And so that's why I picked the name Caden, because it means spirit of battle. So the triumph of that spirit when we're battling ourselves in our mind, or even if it's physical, in whatever it is. And that little spirit. And to believe unconditionally in yourself and in that spirit, right?
Yep.
So essentially it's the same idea. It's articulated a little differently as far as owning your warriorness and owning your world, and then taking ownership of it. And I learned that lesson a few times, but one of them in college when I blew out my hamstring and I missed a year of football, and I blamed the trainers. I blamed everybody else. I started getting good at drinking beer. I started going to an AA meeting, AA meetings for injured athletes.
Okay.
Not actually an AA meeting. Maybe I probably should have at the time. But in college, there were these groups of all the injured athletes that had a crack in identity. And so we sat and talked about our injuries. It was actually great, progressive. It almost got me into sports psychology. And so I ended up later on going back and presenting.
Oh, nice.
But eventually, I grew up that year when I realized that I am responsible for my actions. I'm responsible for my predicament.
Yeah.
If I want to be healthy, it's up to me. I'm like, and then it was almost like, oh, I can do it. I can make myself better. I can get faster. I can heal. I can get myself better. I can get myself faster. I'm going to get stronger. I'm going to become unconquerable. So that's what, like, owning it and then getting excited about it. Like, holy smokes, it's up to me.
Is that where it was kind of that spirit was first kind of ignited in you in college when you were going
That's
through?
when I started to like really apply it.
Okay.
There were other times, like looking back, I didn't necessarily realize. I remember being in 5th grade and figuring out I could do my own homework. And I told my mom not to help me anymore. You know?
Yeah.
So there was like little signs of it.
Yeah.
It didn't just like manifest itself then. But that's really when it kind of just, my life changed for the better that year. And so that struggle is where strength grew out of.
Got it. And that's where strength, I think some of the strongest people have been born out of pain and struggle. And I actually want to, like, there's so much to divulge with that like concept. And I think I would challenge any listener to look at your life and look at the struggle you've had, and write it down and look at the growth that came from it, like good or bad. Look at the growth that came from it and where you are now, like how it helped you get to where you are now. And so you can honor that struggle, because I've definitely had times where I look back and I'm like, why did I do that? What the heck was I thinking? I write it down and I look at how that decision has helped me get to where I am today, a place of more, increased self-reflection, happiness. It's a journey. And that's something that, what I want people to know too, is that it's not just an arrival. Like, oh, you had this realization and you've arrived. Good job. Now you're good forever. Like, it is a process, a battle in your mind. And you're right. Bulimia was born out of that, not winning that and letting that take over. And that's where any addiction can be born of. Any mental illness, any illness can be born from what's between the ears. So I want to do one final question for you, because we could probably talk all day. But this is since a lot of your podcasts and your messages are for something for your sons to pick up one day, maybe you could leave a message on this podcast for your sons. And what would you, with the whole My New Normal theme, right? The My New Normal is, hey, a good example is like, you went through this injury and you're not the same before. So don't try to be like you were before. Be who you are now. Be as strong as you are now. Pre-baby, post-baby is different. Be okay with who you are now and be as strong as you are now. Or job, partnership breakup, whatever. So maybe you could tie in the theme of My New Normal and a small message that you would give your sons and Magnus.
All right. So check this out. One, I want to tie something to what you said about a minute ago. And this is something about strength. And that is that forgiveness is freedom. And to have the ability to forgive yourself.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Because listen to me, everybody. You need to forgive yourself. Forgive your mistakes. Forgive your regrets. And maybe this will tie into your question. And when you were saying it, my first feeling was like, I'm okay with my messages that I've put out there. I'm not in a hurry anymore to like dump stuff out for the kids. So one, it like reassured that what I'm doing and choosing to do with my time is right. Also, if you're looking for your new normal, as soon as you think you have a normal, life's going, oh, okay, hold my beer, stand by. We're going to change that. Right. So it's not a location. Right. It's a journey. And so a good thing to remember is if you focus on the lesson, you grow. If you focus on the pain, you suffer. And pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. The different factor there is resistance. So if you take pain times resistance equals suffering. Because pain is subjective. It's a stimulus. It's a stimulus. And in life, you have two choices when things that are outside of your control happen. And you can accept them or resent them. And so the more resentment you have towards pain, the more you're going to suffer.
Yes. And it can become chronic pain. That's how chronic pain can fester.
Yep. And on a side note for people, I think, and this is something that I cannot do for anybody, and that is having an understanding of your why. And what is your why? And who are you? And what do you want? Those are super simple, difficult questions. They're a paradox.
You aren't the first person on the podcast. Actually, would these be questions that you'd want your sons to ask themselves too?
Yeah. And I'm going to provide them the tools with that, but that's also the sign above my door here. Temet noske means know thyself. And so a couple of tools that I'm doing as a dad for my kids that I didn't have, and hopefully it works out, you never know, but it's teaching them breath work really early. Like when a first day of school for a monk, when they're 5 years old, is on breath work and it's taught by a 10-year-old. And their breath is what you have at the beginning. It's the first thing in life you have, or for most kids, and the last thing you have. And it's also, unless you're in the middle of a jiu-jitsu match or something, but you have and two things that are in your control in life: your thoughts and your breath. And additionally, your attitude and your effort. But those are tied into your thoughts. But your thoughts and your breath. And to take ownership of those and be proud of those and go to them when you need them. And that's the path to being unconquerable.
Couldn't agree more. Those are good messages to leave these little humans.
Yeah, and take care of dad and call him and text him, go see him.
That's right. Yes, exactly. And any parent out there with kids, any parent, any human out there, look at the ways to downregulate. And those are key things that will help you become unconquerable because you need that parasympathetic stimulus. So thank you so much, Scott, for being on the show. This was a lot of fun. I love being in your think tank here. and Thought Palace. And you have a wonderful spirit. And if people want to get a chance to know you or see what you're up to, where would they find you?
Well, on Instagram, I'm at one Scott McGee, and that's the number one Scott McGee. Only because I am just one Scott McGee. Also at the Sisu Way and the SisuWay.com.
Okay.
That's the podcast. And also, because it's probably going to come out before this does, to go check out Teresa's episode. It'll be episode 32 of the Sisu Way.
Roger that. And we will link all that up into the show notes. And it is a complete honor to be in your space. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that's it for today, everyone. Now go out, take ownership of your life, adapt and overcome. This is your host, Dr. Teresa Larson, coming to you from sunny San Diego. And kindly leave a review.